What do you think about the Laker team now?
Do you follow the box scores of the games every day?
Just the Lakers.
You're kidding. That is really a compliment. I was pleased to see you smile at the top of our show because once the game starts, you have a game face. You don't smile much out there.
I don't think you have to do things for money anymore.
Correct.
What's up, Laker fans? Welcome to the Laker Film Room podcast. I'm Pete, joined by Darius. And yesterday, Team USA continued to roll with a 122-87 victory over Brazil on the men's side. As Joel Embiid had a really good first half, I thought, the much maligned Joel Embiid throughout this. Devin Booker played very well as well. LeBron and AD continued to roll. LeBron caught an elbow just above the eyebrow and took 4 stitches. Looks like he's going to be okay, but he did not play beyond a certain point in the second half. But yeah, the men's team and the women's team continue to roll in Paris, D. So talk to me about what you're seeing from Team USA.
Yeah, just another dominant game. The first half was especially so. Embiid's an interesting character here to me. He's so good offensively, but in FIBA ball, he seems to be best used as a stretch 5 rather than someone who is in the post. He still seems to be struggling with the really hard, aggressive doubles and the rotations that international teams make out of doubles and the general lack of spacing in the FIBA game that is just like a shrunk court because of the closer 3-point line and everything that goes with that. And so he's getting just swarmed and turning the ball over and the passes are getting deflected and his reads are not as clean. But when his jumper's going, he is just an unreal offensive player because he's so big and you have to account for him with another big player. And he's got such good touch around the basket and such a good free throw shooter. I'd love for him to be a stronger finisher. And I don't know if you saw this, but there was this story out there recently about him not dunking as much, and like a couple of the coaches and teammates like getting on him about not dunking as much. So if you see him dunk, he'll like make gestures to the bench and stuff because he's sort of highlighting the fact like I could do that too, or that was for you guys. But Embiid's 3-point ball, that falling makes it so that Team USA is unbeatable to begin with, but they're impossible to deal with if he's hitting the 3-point shot.
That's something that actually I'm glad you brought that up as the last thing. Is at the beginning of this tournament, I was like, I think Germany's about the second best team and they could give them a really good game. And Germany's still in. We saw Canada get upset by France. That's the other side of the bracket, is France and Germany as US plays Serbia in the semifinals. But from watching this tournament, D, I don't think there's another team. I mean, we'll see, right? We got maybe 2 more games to go, but I've come away with the impression that Team USA is clearly ahead. There isn't a 2012 Spain in this bracket.
Even if there was a 2012 Spain in this bracket, Team USA is so good. This group of guys is so talented. When a player as good as Tyrese Halliburton, who's really, really good, before he hurt his hamstring growing last season, he was in the running to be a first-team All-NBA player. Now, of course, quarter of a season sample size or whatever, like any player can look great for 20 games or 25 games, but he was excellent last season. And then even towards the end of the playoffs, he was still a pretty good player. When that dude doesn't play at all, and almost justifiably so with how well everyone else is playing, it's just an unreal group of guys, and they're so talented, and their shot making and quality is so high, and they're so much more physical than these other teams, especially with like LeBron and Embiid and then Bam and AD. That front line is like, what are you going to do with that? Like, there's no other team in the world, even with their best players, that is going to say like, we could physically match up with these guys. And then they have the guards to back it up as well. So it's not like, we've got a certain quality of big, like the France team, but not enough guards. Or Canada, who had a bunch of guards and wings, but really no real inside strength with like Dwight Powell and Kelly Olynyk. They're good NBA players, but it's just like, let's be real here. The balance and the ability to bring off all-stars from your bench, or all NBA players really off of your bench, it's not the same caliber of roster at all.
The talent on Team USA, especially when all the big dogs decide we're going to go, to the Olympics, that that's never in question, but I've been really impressed with this team's ability to coalesce in a short period of time, especially on the defensive end. I thought and again, Kerr had annoyed me. And of course, coaches become less annoying the more talent they have at their disposal. But he was pretty annoying to me in last year's FIBA, or what was that, the World Championships in 2023, the one Austin was in? And with not really matching what he was doing from a schematic standpoint with the talent that he had. And so you're finding Austin ISO'd against a much bigger Lithuanian dude who's like 6'8" and bodying him. And it's like, yeah, that's not going to work. But with this team, and again, you have a ton of talent, the switching and that second unit has come in and really been dominant. And then in this game, I thought it was the best starters game. Obviously Embiid having such a good game really helped that. But I thought that he's put a lot of his guys that, hey, we need to run a drop scheme in this group with the starters, and then the bench group had the concept of switching. But what I thought was impressive against Brazil was there was no need to be in a drop against them. They had our old friend Marcelo Huertas probably playing in his last Olympics at age like 41. And he was attacking off a drop and hit a couple of elbow mid-range jumpers. And I'm like, why are we dropping against Huertas? And just a couple possessions later, they started to switch with Embiid too. And so there's been a little more flexibility within what Kerr does that has stopped some of the things where it was like the other team's beating us the same way every time in 2023. He's been turning that off a lot earlier.
I'm glad you got to that point about Embiid switching, because that's a point I wanted to hit on him earlier and it got away from me. I was talking about how well he was doing offensively, but at the beginning part of the game, he was struggling defensively, at least in terms of like deep drop, sort of no man's land, wasn't really stepping up to contest the runners that Huertas was shooting, and then wasn't even really bodying his own man in terms of offensive rebounding stuff. But when they switched, he had a few impressive defensive possessions, I thought, and slowing down a 41-year-old Huertas, who is not an outside shooting threat, is one thing, but Embiid got in his stance a couple of times against shiftier players and hung in there to a level that allowed the rest of the defense to do their thing. And once they really got into lockdown mode switching, Brazil couldn't score at all. And to start the second quarter, I think it was like 4 or 5 minutes before they scored at all. And that's like half of the quarter. So Brazil, not the strongest opponent for sure, but it was impressive, I thought, for Team USA's ability to say, like, we are running out with this early and you're not even going to have a chance against us. And their ability to come in waves like, oh, it's not Ant Edwards' day, well, then it's Devin Booker's day. It's not Devin Booker's day, it's Kevin Durant's day. It's not Kevin Durant's day, it's LeBron, it's whoever. And I continue to say this, man, but the combination of Bam and AD on both ends of the floor really is super impressive to me. Bam has been one of the more impressive players overall to me. Brazil came out of a timeout and went zone against Team USA. Bam flashed right to the high post at the like at the nail. He caught the ball, turned and shot a jumper, full rhythm, full understanding of what the task at hand was, and buried it. And then Brazil's just like, looks like that's not going to work either. And to have no answers against any of these units, it's like, okay, Brazil's not the caliber of opponent that is going to do anything against Team USA. But Serbia is an interesting team, and that's next in the semis in order to get to the gold medal game. And let's go to break here because I am intrigued by a third game against this team, and a Serbia team that Team USA has beaten pretty handily both times. Scale of 1 to 10, Pete, how worried are you, or how concerned are you contextually about a Serbia team? Now, we just sung Team USA's praises, and so we know that they're overwhelming favorites, but Jokic, Bogdanovic, some good players still. Where are you at?
They have a guy capable of being the best player on the floor when they play tomorrow, and that is always a great thing to have in the game of basketball. Now, the other side's going to have the next several best players. But, Jokic can really take over a game. And what was the crazy stat last time they played? It was like 81-81 in the minutes that Jokic played. And then the score was like 29-3 in the minutes that he didn't. Just something crazy like that. And so he's probably going to have to sit sometime tomorrow. And they can jump all over him then. But I've thought that, and that was a Serbia team that I think it was 2019, beat Team USA. And I've thought that Team USA has done a great job of being faster than the big teams and bigger than the small teams. And so being faster than the big teams is that explains the matchup with Serbia. I've thought that Serbia has really had to condense the paint in a way to not get beat off of the dribble and just not get beat with speed in a way that's really opened up their jump shooting. And so that to me is the place, if you're asking for a concern 1 through 10, there's 2 points for just any high stakes game, right? Another 2 points for them having Jokic, and then that trying to beat a good team 3 times in a row. And the jump shooting may not be as good as it was the last couple of times as a result. There are always nights like that. So I can see a path for Serbia, but it's a very, very specific one that involves USA missing some open shots.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you have concern about Team USA's jump shooting at all, or do you think that they have a floor that they're not going to fall below based off the fact that it's just like when you've got Curry and Durant
right.
and Booker, and then Edwards, who is proving to be a quality 3-point shooter at this distance for sure too. And then even LeBron has been hitting the 3, and it's just like, okay, we've got a lot of guys who are just making this shot. And so are you concerned at all though that they could have one of those nights and it's just like,
I mean, that's, again, we're talking levels of concern that are about as not concerned as possible while accounting for the fact that you can always have those nights, no matter who you are. That's one of the more high variance things in basketball is your ability to hit threes. But I also think the way that they get their threes is very high quality. I think the only bad threes they get are to Steph, and it's something where we force some possessions to him that I think are like a little more than necessary, especially with the roster that they have. But by and large, the looks they get, and like guys like White, Drew Holiday shot just an insane level on wide open threes this year with Boston, where they've got enough guys to where it's going to be very hard for that kind of night to happen. And that's part of the reason why I started this tournament they're okay. They had the battle with South Sudan. I was like, they've got all this talent, but they're a little slow. But the more games that go by, they really are separating themselves as one of those really dominant teams.
One of the questions I have about the Serbia game too is whether or not Embiid plays. Reports came out overnight that Embiid's dealing with a bit of a sore ankle. I don't know if that's going to impact his availability for the Serbia game. Do you think the matchup changes in either direction, positively or negatively, if it's like AD who in one-on-one situations has, I don't want to say struggled, but like Jokic has physical advantages over him. He's got advantages over Embiid as well, just in terms of like short area quickness, but Embiid's their bulk center. He is their strength guy. He is the guy that you cannot back down as easily. And I know that Serbia is not the Denver Nuggets. They do not run everything through Nikola Jokic. They probably should, but they don't. And so it's a different calculus for sure. But do you think it changes, particularly from a shooting standpoint as well, since Embiid can stretch the floor a little bit more, but AD then does have the athleticism and mobility thing. So like, where are you at with that?
It does change a little bit, but I just think that Team USA has so many answers with AD and Bam and guys like LeBron and Tatum who are big forwards who can double and help on the boards. It's just...
Yeah, Durant as well, too.
Yeah, there. KD, right? Like, I just think that there are... you obviously don't have a guy that's as big as Embiid. There's nobody on the U.S. roster that's as big as Embiid to bang with Jokic, but I just think that there's... And that's something AD has done better since this past season, and even in these games, like that was something that I think that we forget in the 2023 playoff run and in their series there. AD had come off of a foot injury. Remember, he had that mid-foot injury that there was great concern that he was going to be out for the year. It was supposed
to cost him the season. It was supposed to cost him the season.
So I know he made it back and I know he played great, but I'm sure that had to guard a bigger guy like that, you have to anchor your back foot. right? You have to be able to be like, no, you're not going to bump me and just back me down. And that's a big ask when you're guarding Jokic to do that. And so, yeah, foot injury is probably going to hurt you quite a bit in terms of how sturdy your base is. And so, yeah, AD's gotten better at that. I did a playback yesterday, D, on the 2021 play-in game. And one of the things that was noticeable was like, wow, AD is skinnier, like noticeably skinnier than he is now. And that was something that just like I think he can absorb a little more of Jokic than he has in the past. Where are you at on that?
No, I think that that's right. I also think that when AD has this much support, and to me, it's not just the forwards that you mentioned, but the physicality with the guards. Mm-hmm. And so
Drew, yeah,
like Drew and even Derek White and Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker, these are really strong guards, and guards that will go in there and rebound. They will stand you up on a switch and battle. They're able to battle around and get to a front position, and then that allows AD to then recover and then scram you out and all of this other stuff that to me, their flexibility defensively from Team USA standpoint, the level's just so high. We've talked about the Bam and AD duo, is that basically just creating a no-fly zone around the paint. But when you've got AD and Tatum and White and Holiday, it's just like there's no room anywhere.
Yeah, there's no entry point that I talk about. Yeah.
That to me is where they are so overwhelming. It's not even the fact that they're creating a bunch of turnovers like the dominant Team USA teams and like the Dream Team or even the Redeem Team or the 2012 team. Those teams were so dynamic in transition, and it's because they were like high turnover teams. When you had Michael Jordan and Clyde Drexler and Scottie Pippen and those guys just sort of like destroying the passing lanes. And then in 08, It was like Wade and Kobe and LeBron and Bosh and Dwight Howard. Those dudes were just killers in creating turnovers. This team plays a more like keep you in front style, but when they switch, they absolutely swarm you and shut off all of these driving lanes. And these guards, you could see the look in their face when it's like, wait, I went from Drew Holiday on me to Anthony Davis or Bam Adebayo. It's like their eyes get wide, and there's a certain amount of, I don't want to call it fear because they're competitors, but there is an anxiousness that you can see in their faces about like, what am I supposed to do here?
Absolutely. And that's part of the reason why in some ways Canada may have had the best shot against USA, because that I think they could have nullified some of that switching if SGA was cooking and if Murray was playing much better than he actually was, right? So maybe that wasn't going to be a thing at all. But that is something that there aren't other teams that can do that, where they can switch 1 through 5 and really have a guy that's able to move their feet with other international guards. And so that really is the separator, I think, for Team USA. Let's take another break, talk about the rest of the tournament and beyond. So yeah, dude, we got tomorrow against Serbia. Then the winner, if they win that game, the winner of France versus Germany. I viewed the Germans as being the best team remaining. How do you see that?
I think they're the best team. That's right. I think obviously France has maybe the best individual talent out of all of those guys, as well as a little bit of home cooking potentially with like being at home as the host country. And France was not impressive in the like preliminary rounds or even in the lead up to the games. They had lost like 3 or 4 games in a row going into the Olympics. They barely escaped against Japan after Rui got ejected on a couple of soft fouls and then made it to overtime on the strength of a 4-point play that didn't really look like a big foul, and then like hung on in OT against Japan. I think they were 1-2 in the preliminary rounds and then advanced, or 2. It doesn't matter. They haven't looked good, but they absolutely blitzed the Canadians.
Yeah, what happened there?
And I wanted to sit there for a second because pretty disappointing for Canada. 10 NBA players, a guy who finished, second in the MVP in SGA, who had a great tournament run himself. They've got a bunch of quality dudes, and they couldn't defend the paint against a physical France team. Gobert didn't even really play. Wemby didn't even have a great game. I think he was 2 for 10 was just not the same level of impact player. He had a couple of great defensive plays in the fourth quarter. But overall, it's got to be disappointing, right? For Team Canada, they were undefeated in pool play and had a good run up to the tournament. And to go home without a medal, it's kind of like, word, this is what we did. And with like Jamal Murray looking like, I don't know, man. He looked bad.
It's so frustrating. Every time I watch Jokic miss a step back bullcrap Sambor shuffle jumper, or Jamal Murray just look like not make every impossible shot, it makes me more and more angry as a Laker fan. Although, like, that's what we get for not having a freaking too big look. For 2 years, we didn't have a too big look. If you look around the league and around the Western Conference, every team's getting bigger. Like, that's been the trend for the last few years. The whole idea, like, oh, everyone's getting smaller to play around the 3-point line. That's 5 years ago talk, and that's part of what's great about the NBA. It's always evolving, and then once you can find the big guys that can move their feet a little bit, and you figure out a little bit more scheme-wise, hey, we can do this and defend the perimeter, there's never an advantage to being smaller inherently, right? Like, if all things else is equal, that's going to matter, is having the bigger players. And so, yeah, that kind of serves us right that it ended that way for us, but that's part of the reason why having that sort of size can make a Jamal Murray look not that great, right? Even with Wemby not having a great game on the offensive end, there is that impact of just kind of being bigger than the opponent that the Lakers have not benefited from, that I thought that, like when Canada's guards can't get going, as you said earlier, they don't have a ton more, even though they have all of those, they have all of the other NBA players. A lot of those guys are they're supposed to be the moons, right? You made an interesting comment before we started recording that about something Sue Bird said about Olympic play. And I'm thinking about basketball on offense, especially more and more like planets and moons, right? The moons are the things that revolve around the planets. And these are all players who are used to being the planets on their particular teams. But the vast majority of them have to become moons on some level on Team USA. And Sue Bird kind of talked about this.
Yeah, she was on Carmelo Anthony's pod, and she had mentioned that I think, and I don't want to misconstrue the quote too much here, but I believe that she said that Team USA basketball as like a blanket statement for her, it was like the most uncomfortable basketball that she's ever played. And she talked about how if you're like the best player on the team, maybe you get to play your preferred style and your game is pretty much unchanged from what it is normally. But everyone else has to really get slotted into a role and fit into that role. And then you become very conscious about what that role is, and you're constantly trying to make the right play. I think we saw this with Team USA, the American team, the men's team, leading up to the games where there was like a lot of overpassing, some turnovers, and it's just like you see guys trying to make the extra pass and trying to do the right thing, but that's actually not necessarily the right thing based off of what's available to you there. And I could imagine that for Team Canada, this is the best team they've ever had, but it's also not necessarily the group that has been playing together for a while. Forever. And that gets back to your point about Germany. This German group has been the team that's been playing together for 3, 4, 5 years now. They are the defending World Cup champions, right? They are, and they really understand what their roles are on this specific team. And so is Franz Wagner, quote unquote, the best player? Sure, but he's not their leader. And he's not the guy who's going to handle the ball all of the time. That player is Dennis Schroeder. Now, in the NBA, Schroeder is this feisty guy who's going to like be on ball and do his thing, but he's not the guy who you're like, oh, you get the car keys for your entire team. That's not his role, but for Germany, it totally is. And he sets the tone for that team, and everyone else gets slotted accordingly. And they have good bigs. They've got a really good shooter. I think his name is Popst. And they just understand what they're supposed to do on both sides of the ball. And so I'm interested in that matchup between them and France, because the French team with Wemby and some good NBA talent, and we'll see what happens with Gobert, they've probably got the higher end dude But Germany is a super balanced and well-coached team who understands exactly what they're supposed to do. And it would not surprise me if Germany wins that game, even though France has some things going for them.
No, very, very much so. I think a lot of those players outside of Dennis, who, even though doesn't do that for an NBA team, I would say that being the leader and sort of the heart of a team, that is within Dennis's character in terms of that's come natural. He's been that on a lot of teams throughout his life. And so when you look at
natural.
That, if he's filling that role, that slots everybody else pretty nicely. Like Franz Wagner gets to be an off ball, also on ball, 3-level scorer type of guy. Not a great 3-point shooter, but can provide, scoring in a number of ways. You've got guys like Tice and Mo Wagner on the interior, pretty much playing the roles that they play for their NBA teams. And so this to me, and there's a tie back to our Lakers team as well, in terms of getting guys into their appropriate roles, that is part of what the internal growth of the Laker team can be, of do we really want Rui chasing around perimeter shooters? Do we really want D'Lo, for example, was guarding tall shooters and was guarding threes for a lot of the year. There are places, do we want Hayes in a drop that often, where you can there's room to grow. And so I think a team like Germany is an example of hey, once everybody is in a position where they're doing the things that they are good at, the sum of the parts can be greater than the individuals of the teams that you're playing, even though they can be better individually.
So if you had to pick then what the gold medal game would be, are you leaning towards USA versus Germany?
US-Germany, for sure. How about you?
Yeah, that's probably where I would lean as well, with the caveat that France is a wild card to me. And
sure.
I don't know, man. Wemby was only a rookie last year, but I saw that dude take over stretches of games, even against the Lakers, where it was just oh my goodness, he can't miss, and the game is really flowing in his direction. He did that in one of the last games of the season against Denver and basically knocked them out of the number 1 seed, and that probably cost them a berth to the Western Conference Finals. When you think about them, yes. When you think about how the matchups played out, a thing that Mike would tell us in the text thread a lot is that Denver kept getting chipped away at by each successive opponent, right? And each team took a little bit more out of them. And I would argue the Lakers were the first part of that they weakened them. And KCP had talked about that too on a recent podcast appearance, where he was basically saying we thought the Lakers should have beat us. And he's probably right. It did take a couple of game winners from Murray. That's sort of where I'm leaning now. But France, I don't know, man. If Wemby gets it going, could you see a 30-point, 10-rebound, 5-block game from this guy in order to get them to a gold medal game on their home soil? That does not seem out of the question.
It doesn't. And he's one of those guys that really makes you push the limits of, is this possible or not? Because we've already seen him do certain things. I remember Greg Anthony being I've never seen somebody dunk from this position, right? It was like a baseline drop step from the other side, basically. And he planted on the other side of the hoop. And just the way he did it. And Greg Anthony was what? And so it's cool when we get those athletes in the NBA and across the Olympics. I've loved just watching these Olympics in general. It's been a lot of fun to watch these, and really cool to see the world come together and compete.
Is there a sport that you've been this is the one that I've enjoyed watching the most? Because I have my favorites every Olympic cycle, but I'm just wondering about you.
So there was a ping pong match that was just watching people in the Matrix. I was screaming the whole time. It was great. The volleyball, both beach volleyball right in front of the Eiffel Tower is super cool. And the indoor volleyball, I've really liked that. Kayaking, I did it once, and it was just enough for me to really appreciate how freaking hard and how much upper body strength these people have to do that. So a lot of them, I'm intrigued by the sports you never get to see and outside of the Olympics really ever. So it's more that I've been more intrigued by that than really watching the other basketball, to be honest. How about you?
Oh yeah, definitely. I love all of the other sports. So my wife loves watching gymnastics, both men and women.
Simone.
I'm Filipino, so it was great. And my wife is Filipino, so it was great to see Carlos Yulo win a couple of gold medals. He's the first Filipino male to ever win a gold medal at the Olympics, and he won 2 of them in gymnastics events.
Oh, that's awesome.
Randomly, you're scrolling, and then you get clips of what's happening. Like my wife showed me this clip of like synchronized swimming yesterday, and they had this crazy.
Yeah.
Well, they had this crazy angle too, where they used to show it above. Right. So the camera angle would all be above so you could see what the action was looking like above and how it looked. But there was this crazy angle where they showed you from the side and the water was like clear, almost like how you would it like watching it like SeaWorld, how you could like see the top of the water and then underneath the water as well, like if you're standing outside the little glass tube. So you could see them, you could see their full bodies. The part that's underwater and the part that's above water. And I was like, just amazed. This is unreal. I'll send you a clip if I can find it because it was amazing. And then watching like divers and just these people who are the best in the world at what they do. And like when you're diving, this was platform diving and they're, I don't know, man, 15, 20 meters up in the air. They're pretty freaking high.
Yeah.
It's like you're 40 feet up in the air and you do this crazy dive and you don't make any splash at all.
There was this Chinese women's diver that, did one of those that was like, oh my God, like
this is sorcery. No, it's sorcery. Like it really is.
Yeah.
And then I love watching track, honestly, like when it's really just like, we're going to race. Like this is something I think that we could all relate to going back from when we were kids, right? It's just
in every culture. Yep.
It's like you're out on the playground. We're going to race from here to the monkey bars, or we're going to race from here back to the classroom. Everyone's raced their homie at least once in their life. And to see these athletes get out there and basically be like, it's basically you and me. And we're going to run. And track athletes, I feel like naturally are the cockiest athletes of them all because it really is like, there's no scoring. There's no like, the technical aspect of this. It is, I'm lining up right next to you and first one across the line wins. And so when you were good at that, there is this natural inclination to be like, I truly am the best in the world. Like you cannot stop me.
It's so funny you framing it that way because so many of the events you can see kind of the historical, anthropological, how did this start? Like pole vaulting, right? Like, I bet you can't take this stick and jump over that thing. Like imagine how, a couple bored guys 10,000 years ago, right? And that was a cool one too, was watching, what was his name, Duplantis break the pole vaulting record and the noise the crowd made. I was turned around, I had my back to it when it actually happened, and the crowd was so loud, it like made me jump and I turned around and watched the replay. But super fun Olympics. We're gonna cut it here. We'll be back either tomorrow or Friday. But until then, you've been listening to Laker Film Room Podcast. We'll catch you guys next time.
James has got it in low to McHale. McHale wants to turn, he's double teamed. Just pass out in front, broken up by Worthy. Tip to Magic. Worthy dies on his belly. Magic scores.
There's Magic, got it. Magic fires. It's good. The Lakers win the game. The Lakers win the game. Rebound is Lonnie. 3 seconds left. Van Exel to win it. It's on the way. Good.
Kobe Bryant, 48 points, 16 rebounds. Shot with his 8th block shot that ties an NBA Finals record.
A lot of Laker fans sticking around for this.
You're seeing something that's very rare indeed. A Laker to get MVP chance
in Boston. Of all places.
Are you kidding me?
Kobe, hard to believe.
Are you kidding me? Unreal. Are you kidding me?
Lakers looking to push. Bryant spinning in the lane. Back for Gasol. Pretty pass. And it's back to a 3-point game. Kobe Bryant picked up by Bell. There's the move. 2, 1. Listen.
Unbelievable. For the victory.
It's over.
Shot clock now to 5. Bryant. Yes. And that was a little tap to Alvin Gentry.
Add insult to injury, Kobe. I mean, what a shot. I mean, you can't defend that. Are you kidding me? 2.1 seconds remaining. Denver a foul to give. Jokic trying to disrupt Rondo. He puts it in. Here's Davis, 4-3 in the win. Oh, it's good! Anthony Davis has won it for the Lakers! James again. Oh, he hits another one. LeBron James putting together a closing quarter against the Nuggets.
This historic 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers conquer the bubble, and banner number 17 will soon hang in the rafters.